So just starting here, I'm trying to utilize my expressions to control the reticle, and I just noticed that it's not working because it would probably help if I linked it to the correct master comp. So just making that adjustment and the reticle behaves properly. So unfortunately, I'm going to need to retrack the animating triangle trackers to the new cut. There's no way my old tracking data is going to work. So that all of that is just going to have to be retracked, which is fine. So first, I'm going to make 3 new null objects and name them accordingly. This is what I'm going to apply the track to once I've tracked each robot separately. Next, I'm going to bring up the tracker controls and start tracking. This is going to take a significant amount of time, so luckily I've time-lapsed this quick time. I don't think we need to stabilise the footage. I didn't have to stabilise it before, as the camera motion is pretty smooth and the robots are moving slowly in shot. After Effects tracking is not widely regarded as a great tracking system, but for simple motion graphics it does the job just fine. I think most After Effects artists and operators will agree on some level that the tracker that ships with After Effects isn't very good, and I'd have to agree to a certain extent. Compared to other trackers that inflame and shake and nuke, they would be right, because all of these applications have trackers that seem to be far better than After Effects. But since After Effects is what I'm using for this project, then we're just going to make do with what we've got internally and tweak some stuff to get the best possible outcome from our tracks. You're not always going to have access to other software, so I just want to see what we can accomplish with the After Effects tracker. One thing to note, that in this project I did all of the tracking inside After Effects. I could have used a separate program that now ships with After Effects called Mocha, which is phenomenal planar tracking software. But just for this part of the lesson, I chose to keep everything in After Effects. The next chapter coming up, I'm going to go into Mocha a little bit, just to give you a bit of an overview of how cool it is, if you wanted to use it for future projects. I think if there was some animation change in direction to this animation that we've currently got, and Aaron say wanted the triangle trackers that follow the robots to be super solid, then I would probably switch to Mocha. But for the most part, this tracker within After Effects is giving me some solid results. So before you start your track, you're going to want to watch your footage a couple of times over and watch how your subject moves. Watch the subject that you're going to be tracking and see how it moves, and notice if it breaks frame or has any big movements, moves more to the right or to the left, because things like this are going to come into play. With any tracking software, you're going to start off with 2 boxes on screen, an inner box and an outer one. The inner box is what you're telling the tracker to look for in the next or previous frame, the area that you want to track essentially. The outer box is how far you want your tracker to look for the image that's in the inner box, the search area. Now, one might think that you'd want to set this outer box to a really large area so that the software can have as much information as it wants to look for the part that you've selected it to track. You could do it this way, but the track would take forever, and it may not yield a more solid track than keeping the box small. I usually set my search area about double the size of my inner box, just as a starting point, but depending on how your footage moves, You may have to adjust the search area box to a larger or smaller one, depending on how much your subject is moving. For example, if there's a lot of lateral motion in your plate, you're going to want to have your search area pretty wide to make sure that After Effects has enough information to accurately predict where the subject is going to be in subsequent frames. So instead of a box search area, it's probably going to look more like a long rectangle. This is one way you can help After Effects with the track. Adjusting your search area can either make your track go faster or slower, depending on the size. A slower calculation time might be worth getting a more solid track though. So you're going to have to use your best judgment, and the more tracks you do, the better your judgment is going to be. So around this point I'm going to apply the track to the triangle tracker and animate it coming in with scale and opacity keyframes. It's going to fade in and scale and lock to each robot in succession. Something that I do try to avoid is auto tracking within After Effects. And by auto tracking I mean hitting the play button and letting After Effects do the track for you through the entire sequence. I find that most of the time After Effects does not perform well this way. Notice I said most of the time because sometimes it does work, so just for good measure I might hit the play button and see how long it takes for it to completely fail, which is usually a couple of frames. So then what I'll do is I'll reset the tracker and I'll begin tracking frame by frame. This is my preferred way to track within After Effects. This method, as you can probably guess, does take considerably longer, but it's the way I prefer personally. You set up your tracker the same way as we spoke about earlier. Just instead of hitting the play button, you hit the track to next frame button. Or if you're going to track backwards, you press the previous button. Once you are confident that After Effects has accurately tracked your subject into the next frame, you push the button again and bang, you've tracked 2 frames. This is exciting stuff, I know. But you can keep doing this until you reach the end of your sequence and you'll notice you've got a solid track. Even then sometimes I'll track backwards just to make sure the track is bulletproof. And honestly, After Effects Tracker is really twitchy and takes some messing around with it to understand the things that it likes and to know how to get the best out of it, because in the end any help is better than full-on hand tracking. For some pieces of this HUD animation I'm not going to require a perfect track, so hand tracking is going to be faster and it's going to yield a decent enough result for me to use. The thing with hand tracking is that it can take a while, but it will let you do the things that normal tracking and After Effects won't let you do. For example, when I'm hand tracking the robots when they're off screen, I have absolutely no idea where they are, so how is After Effects going to know? There is absolutely no information for After Effects to use to judge where they are, so this is when hand tracking is necessary. Also, when I'm hand tracking those smaller triangle markers that follow the robots off screen, I'm not going to put a keyframe on every frame, but rather than every 10 or 20 frames. This is just going to ease between them, and this will give the feeling like the robots are moving even though I didn't track every single frame. Again, much faster and yields a nice result. So overall the After Effects tracker is twitchy, but simple things like adjusting your search area based on how much your subject moves and knowing when to stop auto tracking and taking the time to track frame by frame, using the track next frame button can really help you with your After Effects tracks.